on. We honour them and their ancestors for their survival, continued traditions, spiritual connections, and caring of country, sky, water and sea. We pay respect to the elders past and present and will continue to support their right for self-determination. We are committed to reconciliation and respectfully recognise that sovereignty has never been ceded. Welcome everyone to today's research forum. It's great to have you with us. My name's Stephen Harrison. I'm the Director of Mission Research and Advocacy for Anglicare Southern Queensland. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping and then hand it over. So can you please stay muted when you're not speaking today? Feel free to use the chat for questions, comments and links you want to share. And also be aware, for those people just joining, that the webinar is being recorded today. Today's webinar will begin with a little bit of a video and then presentation, and then it will flow into a Q&A time and discussion session. So I'm proud to introduce to you our research and advocacy team for Anglicare Southern Queensland. Firstly, Leanne Wood, who is our Manager, Research and Advocacy, and also Carmela Lagasca, who's our Senior Advisor, Research and Evaluation. And I will hand it over to them to lead you through today's forum.
Thanks very much, Stephen. And yeah, I'd like to welcome everybody as well, and of course make my acknowledgements to those who come before us. This is another in a new series of online forums that Research and Advocacy at Anglicare have been facilitating. We're aiming to do this probably 2 or 3 times a year, and the aim of the forums is to showcase the findings of our research partners, including our student partners, as well as Anglicare's own research projects. We have our third webinar for the year is actually going to be next week. It's probably an area that is a little outside the interests of most of the people who are attending today. It's basically focusing on 2 of our significant aged care projects, the LDAC, End of Life Directions for Aged Care Project, and Embrace, which is ensuring appropriate use of psychotropic medicines in residential aged care. But having said that, please get in touch if you would be interested in attending that one as well. And we're also keen to have your input on other topics that you'd find interesting. So Camilla will pop our email address into the chat. Please contact us at any time. So I'd like to introduce you today to the students we've been working with from the University of Queensland. We have Louise Merker, Tana Allard, Pat Varna Ukrit, Christina Gu, Victoria Gendel and Genevieve Ryan. And they'll be presenting a topic of, I think, that's really contemporary, really topical at the moment. The students have just completed a full-year course in the Bachelor of Social Science at the University of Queensland that enabled them to work on a real-world applied research project with an industry partner from government, community, or the corporate sector as well. So we had identified an issue that we were really interested in exploring, particularly to inform our advocacy in the youth justice space. So with Dr. Steffa Plage as an academic mentor, the students planned the research proposal, they applied for formal ethical approval, they generated and analysed their research data, and they reported not only to their peers last week and their lecturers, but they also volunteered to do this forum today. They're getting very, very close to the end of the nursery. So today's topic is really prompted by those significant levels of public discourse about youth crime in Queensland in recent years, and that tough on crime and the tough on crime solutions that the Queensland Government has introduced in apparent response to public demand. You'd all be aware that, there are other voices, particularly across the youth and community sectors, that have argued that those tough on crime approaches don't work and that early detention actually increases the likelihood that young people are going to return to the prison system, both as young people and as adults. So the research that the students have been doing identified the ways in which news media helps to shape public perceptions of youth crime and can help to influence which policy responses are considered to be acceptable and appropriate by public and by government. So we're going to play a video. So our starting point is a video that the students have prepared. It's about 6 minutes, and that provides an overview of the project and some of the key findings. And then we're going to open it to discussion, as Stephen said, and to comment and to your questions. So please enjoy the video. I'll pass it over. Here we go. Many thank you. Okay. So we're going to basically open the discussion to any questions or comments that people would like to make. Just going to have a quick look here. So is there anyone who would like to start?
I'll start if that's all right.
Thanks,
That
Adam.
was really powerful, actually. Yeah, thank you so much. It's I think, you know, just being able to condense some of that into you know, a brief snippet like that using video with the narrative over the top, I think is, yeah, incredibly powerful to hear. It raised for me a few things. I'm not quite sure where to start, but the first thing that popped into my mind was around the impact on this experience of identity and how that must be changing for young people in communities across Queensland when this overwhelming dialogue exists that that really paints a one-sided picture of them, as you really well described. And I just worry about the impact that will be sustained over time for Queenslanders, young Queenslanders in particular, with that criminalised identity being so overwhelmingly dominant in our culture, and worry also leading into an election and how that's going to ramp up further potentially and continue to exacerbate that stuff. That was like an immediate kind of response from me.
Yeah, I think just a comment from me really. It on the tail end of what Adam said there, that it really emphasised to me, as in our advocacy work, how important it is and will be to provide some of those positive stories about young people. The difficulty, of course, is then getting media to pick up on those positive stories, because they do tend to, as you pointed out, the negative makes the front page much more easily than the positive stories. But I think it's certainly something that we've discussed previously and many of you were involved in the home stretch campaign or had links to that. And in Raise the Age, we have certainly talked about the need to provide some of those alternative views rather than that constant hammering away of the negative stories. Another Adam has asked whether there were any publications that you found to be more balanced in their reporting than others, compared to those that were quite one-sided or right-leaning.
Yeah, thank you, Adam and Adam, for both your questions and your statement. So we wanted to make sure that we covered a political spectrum in the outlets that we chose based on the literature. And because of that, we did see in these News Corp outlets some more right-leaning perspectives and a bigger focus on tough on crime. Then ABC News, we saw more of a neutral stance and a lot of fact-based coverage. There was an offence, there was an offender, less complex, looking at the complexity of the issue of youth crime. But then in the Brisbane Times and the Guardian, we saw a lot more academic voices coming through. There's a lot more youth crime experts, legal experts coming through, and statistical information as well. So because of that, we see some more leaning towards rehabilitative measures as such. But we always saw that when rehabilitative measures arose within the articles and within the comments, tough on crime was always alongside it as well. So they didn't have the space to stand on their own, if that makes sense, which was really interesting, that we couldn't have tough on crime could stand on its own, but these alternative measures weren't as much within the coverage.
Triana has asked whether your research project and the findings are publicly available. I'll just comment that we are recording, just to reiterate for those who came in late, we are recording this this forum, so you can, obviously, you'll be able to see the video and play the video for others. That'll be publicly available. Genevieve or Pat, do you want to speak to other ways that you'd like to be able to get your research out, or it's currently in the public forum?
If I may jump in here.
Sure, thank you, Louise.
Our report will not be published because we don't have that clearance there, but we do have a participant information sheet that I think Leanne distributed. So there is some information about our research and our findings on there. And then, of course, the video that's online, yeah.
Sure. So we will send out, after this forum, we'll send out a copy of the summary sheet that the students have prepared. And that's a really interesting capture of some of those key issues that they talked about in the video. And that's publicly, that's okay for people to pass that on? Yes? Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. That's all good. We definitely had a lot of ethical considerations arise throughout our research, because we are dealing with real incidences and victims and offenders as well. So we had to be, and the commenters as well, we had to really work on de-identifying them. So yeah, it's been a lot to juggle, but we came to it well.
Yeah, thank you, Genevieve. Are there other comments and questions?
I've got a question for the students. So we've kind of talked about saying, one of the counters to this is to, get more positive stories about young people. But I wonder if you have ideas about other strategies that an organisation like Anglicare could use to, counter the kind of narratives. Have you had a think about that?
I myself, from our process of coding the articles, of seeing what was the voices in particular that were coming through the articles, there were no youth voices in any of the articles or the comments. So I think something that Anglicare definitely be focused on, I know they are through their advocacy, is youth voices, and not only how they perceive these depictions of their community, but also what their community actually is.
It certainly struck us that there are a lot of experts who have thoughts about how to reduce youth crime, but there's very little in the public space, at least from young people who are involved in the sector, to say this would have worked for me. Or, for the people I know. And it's, something that we're really interested in exploring and talking to our young people about. Stacey's just asked whether your research touched at all on the rise of social media and social media fueled vigilantism. Maybe it's a little bit out of the scope of what you did, but is that something that's kind of come up for you at all in the course of the research?
I would say less earlier on in the research, we were interested in social media, but then came across ethical issues and also closed groups. If we were going to engage with social media, we probably would with private groups. I hope that's right, Louise and Pat. But we did, I guess, social media did come through a little bit with the online comments and juggling. We used Reddit, which is open, and we saw some more diversity in the comments, whether as we touched on in the video, when we had these closed comment forums, it was more of an echo chamber coming through, which is definitely something that comes through on social media as well. But in terms of vigilantism as well, that definitely is something that arose for me more when we were preparing the video and seeing what's, as we've gotten closer towards the end of our video, vigilantism and the voice for victims as well has arisen even more. So it'd be great to continue on with this research and consider the social media aspect as well. It's definitely an avenue that researchers can take.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Sorry, it just made me think again around vigilantism, and I mean, it can be so subtle and insipid, especially when we think about social media as well in those other contexts. Just again thinking about that broad-based narrative that seems to exist, and the decreasing level of safety that people with another opinion feel in the wake of such like this seemingly broad base, because you're only hearing one dialogue so dominantly, then that it feels less safe for people to be able to say, this is my experience, or, you know, as a young person, this makes me feel like, you know, those sorts of things. I think that can be really powerful, that vigilantism that's might not be physically present, but is certainly just an undercurrent that exists in across different types of media.
Yeah, Liz has just sort of picked up on a comment there that we started to talk about earlier, about it'd be interesting to explore the impact of negative media on young people and young people's behaviours. It's certainly definitely another piece of work. So Shay's made a comment too. She's just said she's just spent the last 2 days in a forum where media reporting of intimate partner homicide was discussed at length. We talked a lot about how journalists are so careful and well informed about how to report suicide, but issues like domestic and family violence and youth crime that are more of a political hot potato are reported in such polarised ways. I wonder if there's a potential action around developing reporting guidelines. That's really interesting comment, Shay. Have other people got thoughts about that? And certainly, Genevieve, Louise, Pat, if you'd like to speak into that space as well, feel free.
Yeah, Leanne, I might just make a comment around that. I think in general, developing guidelines for the media is really important and has proven to be effective in the past. We know, the mental health industry had significant success in changing the way that the media talks about people living with poor mental health and the disability industry as well. I will say I think we're up against it with some particular social problems like domestic and family violence and youth crime, because the reality is it's not necessarily that the media doesn't know how to talk about these issues. Negative content sells. Negativity drives engagement drives, advertising, all the rest of it. And the media are making conscious choices here. So from an advocacy point of view, part of the message really needs to be about positive programming that are having have an impact and work. Definitely giving a much greater platform to youth voices and using our opportunities to do that, I think, is hugely influential. I also think we need to call out media strategies around negative content. I mean, we saw this with the recent referendum and the way that negative engagement, negativity really, drives outcomes at a massive scale. So if we ever are really going to change public perceptions, which will drive government, the way that government intervenes and funds programs like us, we cannot do it without the media. We've got to get them on side.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Yeah, Shay's comment there. Yeah, it's a clickbait machine. Negative stories sell. I think, Tani, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some IT issues, so my camera's not working at the moment, so I apologise. It was more of a comment, and just to say, like, it's just really refreshing to see someone put a bit of a microscope on this at the moment. And thank you so much for taking the time to look at it. I guess I work in a space every day where we're surrounded with youth crime and young offenders, and what we see working in it day to day is actually really hard to see in the media when there's such an overrepresentation of youth in comparison to adult crimes and adult offending. When I guess we do sit in lots of meetings, and I do sit in a space where you see the actual statistics around youth offending, and that they're actually trending downwards compared to adults offending rates. And it's just really refreshing to see someone putting a bit of a spotlight on that and having a look at it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Tani. Emily's made a comment or asked a question. So, did you see much intersection in the media coverage between young people engaging in offending behaviour and young people in out-of-home care in Queensland? And she said, I'm wondering if ASQ can use our voice to campaign for reframing the narrative around our kids from hard places. Is that something that kind of emerged out of the analysis? Any of the students, if you'd like to talk to that?
Yeah, I might jump in there. There was certainly a correlation between news media mentioning the socioeconomic status or background of young people, not explicitly naming, in some cases actually explicitly naming that a person would have spent the last couple of years in an out-of-home care or living in an out-of-home care house. But yeah, we definitely found that, unfortunately, as well as the link to people living in certain suburbs or neighbourhoods that were related to, Indigenous populations or lower socioeconomic status populations. Definitely, yeah.
More questions, comments? I'm just thinking, going back to Shay's comment about the reporting guidelines, and absolutely take your point, Liz, about that being, that journalists do make conscious decisions and they do know how things are reported and how perhaps they should be, but the clickbait machine goes into play. But I'm just wondering whether there's room in here within this group for a collaborative effort around developing some media guidelines around youth crime that, in itself, hopefully, is something that we could promote, that we could use as a piece of advocacy, that we, just to use it as a bit of a tool to poke the bear about using some of this research to provide an evidence base for what they're actually doing. Liz has just said, it'd be great to work with young people as well around the development of those guidelines. So I'm just thinking if it's, it's just off the top of my head at the moment, but perhaps if there's, some interest in collaborating around something like that, if people would like to contact us afterwards, and we could see if there's a small collaborative project in something like that means that this research doesn't just end with the forum and the summary sheet, but actually goes somewhere further. Just a thought. Have we got any more questions or thoughts?
Leanne, I just wanted to really put support and endorsement behind that idea around the guidelines, particularly if we work with young people around what language they think is appropriate to use to describe them. It's a massive problem at the moment, the way that young people are being talked about in the media, but sometimes also talked about by the people who want to support them as well. And it's one small thing that we can do to, demonstrate to young people that we are in fact listening, and we are, we are on their side, and we do want to, in fact, increase their opportunities, have their own platform to speak on their own behalf. So I think it could potentially be really powerful. And we can't change the media, but this is something that we can do.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, so please, get in touch afterwards if you're, or indicate your interest in the chat if that's something that you would like to work with us on, because I think that's definitely something that we'll explore a little bit further and just see what the potential is for something like that. Are there other questions about the research, about questions, comments? Thank you, Emily. Sign me up. That's great. And lovely. So yeah, we're getting a few names coming through there. That's great. Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, here we go. We've got another comment. So thank you, Jacinta. So Jacinta said, access to support and community engagement. I went to a seminar earlier this year regarding the overuse of suspension in schools, which explored punishment methods and how harsh punishment is evidently ineffective, focusing on the why rather than the what, and offering nurture, guidance and support tends to help prevent maladaptive behaviours. There also seems to be a large blame on the parents, whereas in my experience, parents are doing everything that they can to support their families, yet don't have enough access to other supports, community supports, to help them. It takes a village isn't an empty saying. Absolutely, it's not. Many families are not in a position to have constant eyes on their children, and our system still expects us to raise our children as if they aren't working. I could go on. Thank you, Jacinta. I think there's a whole lot of really important comments in there. Are there people who would like to make further comments about Jacinta's message? I'm sure it's something that a lot of people have seen.
That's certainly something that arose in our research. I would say particularly in our analysis of the comment sections, the top thing would have been the political side of it and looking at what the commenters wanted government to do or not. But the second was certainly that idea of blaming parents, and saw that attribution of blame hugely. And on a project, guiding the media guidelines, if you're starting there, that's going to flow on to the discourse that's created, I would hope, which is so important. So definitely saw that arose and definitely something to focus on.
I noticed in your summary sheet, which we will send out to everybody else, Genevieve, that single parent families were a particular target of a lot of those comments. Yeah. Jacinta or Emily has followed up to say, especially when the parent is the state. So again, tying those issues, those comments back to out-of-home care. Yeah. Okay, I'm just making sure that I haven't missed anybody. Andrew, so were there any positive stories or themes showcasing holistic solutions that had particularly strong engagement? Did you see any positive stories that came through? Sorry, Louise.
I would not go as far as to call them positive stories, but there were certainly more nuanced discussions. We did code our data towards looking at more complexly discussing the entire topic of youth crime and all the socioeconomic critiques underlying this issue, which was lovely to see in comparison to the more one-dimensional, one-sided data we saw. Incredibly positive stories, I would say no. But that might just be because of our limited data that we looked at. I don't know if the other two ladies want to jump in there.
And I guess the fact that you focused your analysis largely on those very extreme cases where there was a fatality involved perhaps has something to do with the extent to which there are positive stories that were related to that. Would you like to talk a little bit to the fact that you did choose those extreme stories to focus on?
Absolutely. It was probably the very first finding we gathered from our research. We were using a database, looking for any coverage we could find of youth crime in Queensland within a certain time frame. And what came up were these cases that led to a fatality. That's what got the most coverage across all of the outlets. And because of that, we can see how youth crime is portrayed as an extremely violent occurrence, and in turn, just portraying youth offenders as extremely violent, and we're receiving no nuance. On that before though, when we are seeing nuance come through, we did have those advocate voices in some of the articles sharing some maybe more positive stories or more indication of the positivity that could occur from preventative and rehabilitation measures. And perhaps that's somewhere where Anglicare can be beneficial as well. Having an advocate voice within the media is so important to counteract the discourse that is dominating presently.
And certainly we have a number of people from other community organisations here today too, and where that would also be relevant, of course. Yeah, thank you, Genevieve. Further questions or comments? I know people are kind of thinking through some of the discussion. Okay. If you've got further questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. What we might do at this point is sort of start to wind things up a little bit. Stephen has an exciting announcement to make, which I'm hoping many of you will be interested in. So I'll send back to Stephen to talk about that and to say, a general thank you. But from me and from Carmela, I'll say our thanks, and particularly to the students, but to all of you for joining the forum today, and and for your thoughts and your care about this issue. Stephen.
Thanks, Leanne. And look, I also want to add my thanks to Louise, Tana, Pat, Sarong, Victoria and Genevieve for this great bit of research and for sharing it with us. Really, I think everyone's appreciated the stimulation today and starting to think about this issue that's kind of on everyone's mind at the moment. So thank you so much. And thank you for maybe sparking a little bit of work for us as well. It's really great to have that input and to hear some different voices to move us in particular directions in the work we're doing in the advocacy and research space. So thank you. And thank you, Leanne and Carmela and the MRA team for facilitating this today. So as Leanne said, before we finish up, we just want to announce a new initiative that we hope many of you might be interested in. So Anglicare Southern Queensland is launching our first Research Seed Grants program, which aims to provide initial funding for novel or innovative projects between Anglicare staff and university researchers. There will be grants of up to $20,000 available to successful applicants for projects that are consistent with Anglicare's 2023-2025 strategic plan. So the Strat Plan application form and guidelines are available on our website, or you can send us an email and request them. I think Carmela or someone's going to pop the email address in the chat, but it's just research@anglicaresq.org.au. So the key dates are that applications are open on 8th of November, that's next week, and close on the 9th of February 2024. And the announcement of successful applications will be early in March 2024.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, we're very excited. I will just mention that we're open to all sorts of collaboration with that as well. So, I mean, obviously there's a requirement that we have an Anglicare staff member involved, but if there was someone from another community organisation who wanted to work with us on that and link into, with an academic from one of the universities, we're very open to that as well. We're very flexible around collaboration and partnerships, and would welcome any conversations or ideas that people have got. So thank you. I think we're done. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you again to the students. Yeah, Andrew, I think we've just Camilla's just popped into the chat. Andrew's just asking whether there's information about the research, the seed grants. So I think Camilla's just going to pop that in for us now, and we can be in touch. We will send out some more information as well with the summary sheet from the students, and also a very, very short feedback form that if people were happy to fill that in, that would be really helpful for us in terms of doing this again. But thank you again so much, and we'll all be in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leanne, and thank you to everyone for joining today. We've all found this such a fulfilling project, and we were all from the get-go so excited that Anglicare approached the university with this project, and we really look forward to hearing back about anything that you undertake. The media guideline sounds fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Genevieve and Pat and Louise. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Bye.